प्रातः स्मरामि हृदि संस्फुरदात्मतत्त्वम् सच्चित् सुखं परमहंसगतिं तुरीयम् यत् स्वप्नजागरसुषुप्तिमवैति नित्यम् तद्ब्रह्म निष्कलमहं न च भूतसङ्गः तपोभिक्षीणपापानां शान्तानां वीतरागिणाम् मुमुक्षूणामपेक्षोऽयम् आत्मबोधो विधीयते बोधोऽन्यसाधनेभ्यो हि साक्षान्मोक्षैकसाधनम् पाकस्य वह्निवज्ञानं विना मोक्षो न सिद्ध्यति। Hari Om. Welcome once again to another season of Gems of Bhagavad Gita. आप सबका इस नए वर्ष में बहुत बहुत स्वागत है. We will continue our discussion with where we left off. So हमने पिछली बार at the end of last year we had started chapter 12 of the Bhagavad Gita. आप लोग जानते होंगे भगवद गीता is a text with 18 chapters, 18 अध्याय हैं और उनमें से हमने 11 अध्याय कवर कर लिए हैं. पूरी कवर नहीं की है, सिर्फ हमने सिलेक्टेड वर्सेस कवर किए हैं. एंड अब हम 12वीं चैप्टर को शुरू करने जा रहे हैं. हमने शुरू कर दिया था ऑलरेडी. We had covered the first couple of verses and I'll quickly recap. I'll give you a quick recap of where we were towards the end before starting today's class. So 12वीं अध्याय में अर्जुन प्रश्न करते हैं भगवान से. What is better? अगर मुझे आप तक पहुंचना है, अगर मुझे सिद्धि प्राप्त करनी है, if I have to attain spiritual enlightenment, what is better? साकार भक्ति और निराकार भक्ति, form worship or formless worship. Exact question क्या है? अर्जुन का exact question था, should I worship you or should I worship the unmanifest? Should I worship you or should I worship you or should I worship the imperishable, the unmanifest? And many of you may be familiar, हमने कई बार कवर किया था. भगवान जो हैं, चैप्टर 2 में भी आता है कई बार, भगवान जो हैं एक व्यक्ति नहीं है. God is not a person. God is not a human being with 2 hands or even 4 hands or even 20 hands. भगवान को ये रूप दिया जाता है और इस रूप देने में बड़ी सिंबोलिज्म होती है. किसी भी भगवान को जब आप देखोगे एंड उन्हें जो रूप दिया गया है, फॉर एग्जाम्पल चतुर्भुज विष्णु के पास 4 हाथ हैं और हर हाथ में you can see some object or the other. इसका ये मतलब नहीं है कि Vishnu is a person sitting in heaven with 4 hands. No, it's symbolic. So first thing to understand, not going into the symbolism, first thing to understand is that Bhagwan is not a person. God is not a person. God is a state. God is a position. Just as the CEO of a company is not a person. The CEO of a company is a position. Anybody with the right qualifications can rise to that level of the CEO. And it should be the person with the right qualifications. Otherwise, the company will collapse. So today, somebody may be the CEO for a couple of years. Tomorrow, somebody else may take that position. In a school, today, somebody may be the principal. Tomorrow, somebody else may be the principal. And जब principal आदेश देते हैं, it is not the person talking. It is not that individual talking. It is not Mr. Chadha talking or Mr. Chakravarti talking. It is the principal talking. It is not Mr. Chadha or Mr. Chakravarti making the rules. It is the principal giving the adesh, giving the rules. So the principal is not a person. The principal is a position. The person with the right qualities can grow to that state of the principal, can grow to that level to become the principal. Similarly, every human being can rise to the state of Bhagavan. I'm saying a very important thing right now. Each of us in this classroom, anywhere in the world, every human being has the capability, if he acquires the right qualities, he can rise to the state of Bhagavan, as it were. And who is Bhagavan? Bhagavan is one who possesses the bhagas, the 6 qualities. See, Bhagavan means one who possesses the bhagas, just as Balavan means one who possesses bala, power. Jnanvan means one who possesses jnana. So God is not a person, it is a position, and any human being with growth, with spiritual progress, rises to that state of becoming Bhagavan, merges with God, becomes one with God. So that's the first thing I wanted to clarify, which we touched upon last time. So Arjun is asking, Arjun पूछता है, तो मैं अगर worship करूं, मैं किसकी उपासना करूं, किसकी आराधना करूं? Who should I pursue? Who should I worship? Should I worship the formless, the imperishable, the inconceivable, or should I worship you, the person, the sakar? Should I worship the symbolism, or should I worship the ideal, the idea? And Bhagavan gives a very curious answer. He says, Mere anusar, me mataha, according to me, who is best versed in yoga, who is best versed in the spiritual path? Jo sakar bhakti karte hain. Those who do formless worship, form worship. Please, form and formless worship are not 2 different practices. This is something we have to understand. Form and formless worship are not 2 different practices. It is any number of wars have been fought in the name of religion because of this misunderstanding that some people worship a form and some people worship a formless. Please get this idea out of your head. Please clarify this idea in your head today. Form and formless worship are not 2 separate practices. Form and formless worship are 2 stages of the same path. Form and formless worship are 2 stages of the same path. The form, the sakar, the symbolism is a stepping stone to the formless. The symbolism helps you appreciate the formless, the qualities, the ideals, the idea of Vishnu is very subtle. You cannot appreciate in full capacity the concept of Vishnu. Vishnu is a concept. Vishnu is a concept. And उसे capture करना बड़ा मुश्किल है. It's impossible to conceive it, as it were, let alone relate to it. So जब विष्णु उस concept को एक साकार form दिया जाता है, it helps relate to Vishnu. It helps develop devotion. It helps develop affection towards Vishnu. It helps develop affection towards that idea. Just as what is a country? A country is nothing but an idea. What is a nation? A nation is nothing but an idea. India. India is an idea. It is an idea of certain values. It is an idea of certain principles. It is an idea of certain ideals. It is very difficult to capture. It is very difficult to feel one with that idea. So what do? We create a symbol. We create a symbol of a nation. We create the national flag. We create all sorts of national songs. When we look at the national flag, when we sing all these national songs, when we think of all the freedom fighters who were inspired by that idea, we ourselves are inspired by that idea. We ourselves feel one with India, the nation, the country. So a symbol, a form, an idol helps relate to the ideal. God, the ideal, the formless is hard to relate to. The idol helps relate to the ideal. So when you're starting off on the spiritual path, for any spiritual initiate, especially one who is not intellectual, it is very difficult to relate to an idea. God is a concept. God is an idea. So we use the form to relate to the formless. Form and formless are not two separate practices. As you grow on the spiritual path, you will become more and more comfortable. In fact, you'll relate to God as the formless. Aap murti puja se, you'll naturally grow out of it. You'll not need it. You'll not be dependent on it. It doesn't mean you'll stop it. The form helps remind you of the formless. जब आप मूर्ति पूजा करते हो, जब आप किसी मूर्ति की पूजा करते हो, आप क्या कर रहे हो? उस मूर्ति को देख करके आप में क्या विचार जागृत होते हैं? What thoughts arise in you? What feelings arise in you? That thought, that feeling is important, not the मूर्ति per se, but the मूर्ति is all important. Why? Because it helps you remember. It is a reminder. So there will come a time when you will not need the murti to be reminded of God. That's it. That's the only difference. That's when you are nirakar bhakti, for formless worship. So there's no point in differentiating, and there's no up and down. There's no good or bad. There's no right or wrong. Both are different stages of the same journey. Form worship. 99.999% people require form worship. Require a reminder, require an inspiration, require a symbolism, require a idol, as it were. हर जगह हमें आइडल चाहिए. हमें इंडियन आइडल भी चाहिए. जो करियर हम कर रहे हैं उसमें हमें आइडल चाहिए. Why? Because the career per se is difficult to conceive. When we see someone, when we see an idol who is doing the same thing, who is pursuing that same career, we get inspired. So an idol helps relate to the ideal. This is where we left off at the end of the last season, that the unmanifest is directly hard to reach. So use the form, use the ideal, use the idol, use the form, use the sakar to reach the nirakar. Ultimately, it's an internal journey. God is not going to be found outside. God is not an object you can perceive. God is not an object you can reach with your senses. You have to find God within yourself, ultimately. But whatever can help you on the way, whatever can support your journey, whatever can help you as a reminder, if it is going to Char Dham Yatra, if it is going to a temple, if it is having a satsang, if it is meeting certain people, if it is discussing and engaging with a guru, whatever serves as a reminder, please use it on your journey. Because everything is a support, everything is a help. So there are 4 stages on your spiritual journey. There are 4 distinct stages. Ultimately, this is an internal journey. Ultimately, you have to reach that state of dhyan. हमने काफी समय बिताया इस thought पे. We have spent a lot of discussion on this, especially when we were covering chapter 4 and 5 and 6. हमने बात की थी the stages of the spiritual journey पे. First you are in bhoga, first you are in indulgence. You have that paradigm shift from bhoga to yoga. जब आप में वो thought arise होती है, जब आप में वो suspicion arise होती है that what am I doing with my life? What do I really want? Do I really, are things I am acquiring and enjoying really making me happy? That question, when that question arises is in you, you are ready to make that shift between bhoga, from bhoga to yoga. And eventually, as you progress through the spiritual disciplines, you gain a sense of renunciation, uparati, a sense of withdrawal. You become more concentrated. You turn meditative. And through meditation, you attain self-realization, samadhi. That is the ultimate goal. So we've talked about this progression. And Hamesha, whenever Bhagavan in the Bhagavad Gita talks about meditation, talks about dhyan, he always talks about the preparation before. Why? Because dhyan is the ultimate state. Dhyan is the ultimate practice. Dhyan is the final lap. It's the final lap of your journey. Dhyan is the gateway to moksha, to samadhi, to enlightenment. So you can't jump to dhyan. But very interestingly, for the first time, and very curiously, Bhagavan out here says, he first always talks about the preparation, and then he talks about meditation. Here in chapter 12, he's done the opposite. He's given the reverse chronology. And there is a reason for it. It's a very interesting point in chapter 12, where he talks about the 4 stages of spiritual growth, the 4 stages of worship. But instead of talking about stage 1 to 4, he talks about stage 4 to stage 1. The highest practice, the most ultimate practice, the advanced practice, and going backwards to the most preliminary practice. So this is the 4 stages of worship, which we will take up, 8, 9, 10, 11, and we'll discuss what is Bhagavan trying to convey out here. So we'll start with verse number 8 of chapter 12. It's in front of you. Mayyeva mana adhastva, mayi buddhim niveshaya, nivasishyasi mayyeva, ata urdhvam na samshayaha. Mayyeva mana adhastva, mayi buddhim niveshaya, nivasishyasi mayyeva, ata urdhvam na samshayaha. मुझ में मन को लगाकर, मुझ में ही बुद्धि को लगाकर उसके उपरांत करेगा, इसमें संशय नहीं. Fix your mind on me alone. Place your intellect in me. You shall then, no doubt, live in me alone henceforth. Fix your mind on me. Place your intellect in me. What is he talking about? He's talking about meditation. Meditation is nothing but a practice of the mind and intellect resting on the thought of God. Meditation is nothing but a practice of the mind and intellect resting on the thought of God. What happens in meditation? Meditation is the art of keeping the mind on a single pointed thought. I repeat, meditation is an art of keeping the mind on a single pointed thought to the exclusion of all other thoughts. If you have the capacity to hold the mind and whatever comes in, whatever passes, gently dismiss it. That's meditation. And it requires first of all, it requires a qualified mind. It requires a slightly mature mind. The mind has to grow up a little bit. The mind can't be the child. The mind can't be the crybaby. The mind can't be that craving, uncontrolled, unregulated child. It has to have a little maturity, and you need a strong intellect. You need a strong buddhi that has the capacity to dismiss thoughts. It's a process. It's a stage you ultimately reach. That is the goal. Why are we doing all of this? Why are we gaining all of this knowledge? To slowly develop our minds and strengthen our intellects. There's no other purpose. We are not studying here to become good scholars of Bhagavad Gita. We're not studying here to show the world that we are so well versed in the scriptural knowledge. The only purpose of studying this knowledge, the ultimate purpose of studying this knowledge, is to eventually gain a sense of maturity in the mind and strength in the intellect. This knowledge will help your mind grow up and help fortify your intellect. Because ultimately, this is what you have to reach to. You have to reach that state where your mind is resting on a single thought, the thought of God. And usually, what is that thought of God? It is a mantra. What is a mantra? A mantra is the highest symbolism of God. It's the highest idol. मंत्र भी एक मूर्ति है. मंत्र भी एक मूर्ति है. It's something where your thought rests. It's something which inspires you. Just as right now a murti is inspiring you. Why? Because when you look at the murti, you get reminded of the higher. You get reminded of God. A mantra is a subtle murti. That's all it is. That mantra is the reminder. That mantra is the single thought of God. So usually the mantra is Om, or there are different mantras, which usually, traditionally, it is given by the guru to the shishya. And your mind is simply chanting that thought. Om, 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 Om. To the exclusion of all thoughts. No other thought. It is natural for thoughts to try to enter. What does your intellect do? It keeps the mind on this thought. Whatever thought enters, it gently dismisses it. Now, if there are too many disturbances, if there are too many distractions, if your mind is extrovert by nature, there'll be too many distractions. It won't be possible. So your mind itself has to be a little grown up. You try to sit quietly for 2 minutes, you'll probably be able to do it. And you'll feel great. But within 1 minute, within 2 minutes, lots of thoughts will keep coming, keep bombarding. Try it. Try it for yourself. Try it for yourself. So your mind already has to be a little mature, so that there are not too many disturbances. And whatever comes in, the intellect ought to have that strength to dismiss them. So what happens in meditation? There is sound of the mantra, and then there is silence. There is sound, there is silence. Om, silence. Om, silence. And the intellect is observing the sound and the silence. The sound and the silence. The sound and the silence. Ultimately, the chant slowly, gradually dies away into whispers. Ultimately, the chant slowly, gradually dies away into whispers. And then there is no sound. There is only silence. This is what we are told. I haven't reached that state. I'm confessing out here. I haven't reached that state. I haven't gained that state of meditation where ultimately the sound dies away into silence. This is what we are told. But Bhagavan is giving the guarantee. He's saying in the second half of this verse Because I haven't experienced it, I cannot say it with the fullest of convictions. But Bhagavan is giving us that conviction. Bhagavan is supporting us, giving us that little bit of faith that, trust me, if this path you follow, if this practice you do, if you attain this state, you shall no doubt live in me alone henceforth. You will reach me, you will merge with me, you will attain moksha, you will attain samadhi, you will attain self-realization. No doubt, there is no doubt about it. So even though very few people, the rare sadhak who has that ultimate Shraddha, has reached the end of this goal and experienced it. For most of us, it is what we are told by the scripture, what we are told by the Guru, what we are told by the master. But here Bhagavan is giving us that guarantee. No doubt, there is no doubt about this. This is the path. This is the ultimate step after which I guarantee you, you will reach me. You will attain. So meditation is the gateway. Meditation is that final step, final lap on the journey, after which you will attain. There is no doubt about it. You will attain self-realization. You will attain moksha. But it's hard to reach this state. Itni bhi easy nahi hai. It's not so easy. Try it. Try it. That's what he says in the next verse. If you're not able to meditate, if you're unable to fix your mind steadily, then try. Keep practicing. Verse number 9. The fourth stage is meditation. The third stage is Abhyasa, practice. Try it. Keep trying. Verse number 9. Atha chittam samadhatum na shaknoshi maisthiram abhyasa yogena tataha mamichhaptum dhananjaya. Atha chittam samadhatum na shaknoshi maisthiram abhyasa yogena tataha mamichhaptum dhananjaya. यदि तू चित्त को मुझ में स्थिर रखने में समर्थ नहीं है, तो हे धनंजय, अभ्यास योग द्वारा मुझे प्राप्त करने की इच्छा कर. If you are unable to fix your mind steadily on me, then, O Dhananjaya, seek to reach me, try to reach me, wish to reach me by Abhyasa Yoga, yoga of practice. What is Abhyasa Yoga? Literally what it means, yoga of practice. The consistent and dedicated practice of the spiritual discipline. In this case, meditation. If you're unable to do it steadily, at least make a practice out of it, make a habit out of it. Try to take out 5 to 10 minutes every day. Make it part of your daily schedule. Ideally, early hours of the morning. Not much. Problem is people try, once they jump into this, they try to do it for hours and hours and hours. Please, an unprepared mind is not qualified to meditate. You have to slowly work your way up. But you must have the abhyas. You must try. You must get a taste of it. In the ashram, while we were cautioned about being unprepared for meditation, we were always cautioned. Meditation is the final step. Don't try any shortcuts. But at the same time, we did do abhyas every day for 5 to 10 minutes. We did abhyas of meditation. After bhajans, we would sit for 5 to 7 minutes in quiet silence, just to get a taste of it. Ultimately, once you get a taste of it, you have to practice on yourself. Meditation is not a collective practice. Meditation is not something you do in groups. It's something you do in solitude. In chapter 6, we saw this. Humne discuss ki thi. A yogi sets up his asana in solitude. Not in the din and roar of the marketplace. It's not something to be done collectively. Yes, you can gain a taste of it in a classroom. You can get a small experience of it. But ultimately, the abhyas has to be done in solitude, in solace, in your own time, over a period of time. And it's not something you speak about and talk about. You don't discuss it. If you're unable to fix your mind steadily on me, seek to reach me by Abhyasa Yoga. If you're incapable of consistent, constant meditation, those who are capable of meditation sit for hours and hours. Again, something that I have not experienced, but we have seen it. You see it. And people sit for hours and hours, and then they feel like it's barely been a few minutes. Just like imagine when you're sleeping, or when suppose you take a power nap. Suppose you take a power nap, and within 5 minutes, you start dreaming. Oh, and so much happens in the dream. It seems like a roller coaster ride in the dream. And then suddenly you wake up. And you're like, how long was I sleeping? Huh? In the dream, it felt like so long. But you realize you just had a 7-8 minute power nap. So in meditation, this is what the yogis say. For hours and hours, they are in that state of meditation. But when they come out of it, they feel like no time has passed. They're surprised to see, oh, from morning it's become evening. So if you're not capable of that, and it's okay, the rare person is capable of that. There's no shortcut to it. If you're not capable of that, he's saying, do abhyasa. Start little by little. If you're not able to run the marathon, at least start by walking. If you're not able to run the marathon, start by walking. Try to first cover 5,000 steps in a day, 8,000 steps in a day, 10,000 steps in a day. Then maybe try running for 1 kilometer. Try running for 2 kilometers. Practice. You'll be able to run, and you'll be surprised. Suddenly one day you'll be able to run 5 kilometers. So just like anything else, practice, abhyasa yoga. Be dedicated in it. If you're not capable of your abhyas also, why? Because you can't keep doing abhyas. Yeah? Abhyas is not something that, morning to night, you simply keep trying. Why? Because your mind is filled with desires. Your mind wants to do other things. Your mind is extrovert. If you're not capable of abhyas also, he says in the third verse, which is, he's talking about the first was meditation, then is abhyas, then he's saying, if you're not capable of full-time abhyas also, then what do? What is worship then? What is the spiritual practice you ought to perform? He says in verse number 10, which we will chant together. Abhyasepya samarthosi matkarma paramo bhava madarthamapi karmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. Abhyasepya samarthosi matkarma paramo bhava madarthamapi karmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. अभ्यास में भी असमर्थ है तो मेरे कर्मों को परम मानकर मेरे लिए कर्मों को करता हुआ सिद्धि को प्राप्त होगा. If you are incapable of even abhyasa, even practice, then regard my action as supreme. Even by performing actions for my sake, you shall attain perfection. Even if you can't sit in the state of meditation, even if you can't keep practicing, the world is pulling you. You have to perform all sorts of activities in the world. You have all sorts of obligations. You have all sorts of things you do. You have all sorts of things you want to do. Then how do you still be spiritual? How do you continue on your spiritual journey? How do you maintain that consistency of purpose? He says, if you're even capable of abhyasa, if a little bit of abhyasa you can do, but not throughout the day, then regard my action as supreme. Even by performing actions for my sake, you shall attain perfection. Then go, no doubt, go and act in the world. Go and do your business. Go and perform your obligations. Go and live in the din and roar of the marketplace with your family, with your friends, with your colleagues. But what is the attitude with which you should perform action? He says, regard my action as supreme. आप जो भी कर रहे हो, whatever you are doing as an instrument. You are doing God's deed. Thy will be done, not my will be done. You're not doing things out of the helpless craving for the result. You're not doing things with a sense of arrogance. I am the doer. What are you doing? You are simply an instrument. You are simply engaging your body in action that your mind and intellect are designed to do. If you're a teacher, you are teaching. If you are a preacher, you are preaching. If you are a doctor, you are healing. If you are a lawyer, you are doing law. If you're a businessman, you're doing business. Whatever you are designed to do, you are simply doing as an instrument. God has designed me to do this. God has given me these qualities. Let me simply execute them in the world to the best of my abilities, with no prefix, no suffix. No sense of arrogance of who is performing the action. Look at me, I'm so great. Look at what I have achieved. No prefix, no suffix, no craving, no wish, no asha, no hope. Why? Bhagavad Ichcha. जो भी होगा भगवत इच्छा. Regard my action as supreme. Whatever is happening, it is happening. Whatever is functioning, whatever is being done, everything that is functioning is God's deed. I am simply a spoke in the wheel. I am simply a part of the whole. I am simply an instrument in the action. I am simply doing my role. That's it. That is the attitude with which you ought to perform action. So understand the chronology, okay? Highest is meditation. If you are capable of meditation, you don't need to do all of this. Just sit in meditation. That's it. That's your only obligation. If not, abhyasa, practice, try. And there are limits to your practice also. So even if you are having to perform activity, and almost everybody needs to perform activity. How do you perform action? With what attitude do you perform action? Consider yourself as an instrument of action. Don't have that ego. Don't have that kartritva. Don't unnecessarily develop that capability. Again, this is not something that comes automatically. It comes with maturity. It comes with knowledge, which is why it is still a slightly advanced state. It is not nursery. It is maybe junior school of spiritual path. If meditation is PhD, then abhyasa is college level. Then this is higher secondary. This is senior school of the spiritual path. And if you're not even qualified for senior school, if you can't even conceive this state of being an instrument of action, if you can't conceive this state, if you can't control your kartritva and bhoktritva completely, he says in verse number 11, the final stage, among the 4 stages, the final stage of worship, in verse number 11, he discusses, and we will take it up. Athaitadapya shaktosi kartum madyogamashritah sarva karma phalatyagam tatah kuru yatatmavan. Athaitadapya shaktosi kartum madyogamashritah sarva karma phalatyagam ततः कुरु यतात्मवान. यदि इसको भी करने के लिए असमर्थ हो तो संयमी हुए मेरे योग का आश्रय लेते हुए सारे कर्मों के फल को त्याग दो. If you are unable to do even this, do what? Consider my action as supreme. Consider yourself as a mere instrument of action. Surrender to nature. Surrender to nature. If you're unable to do that, then taking refuge in the union with me, renounce the fruit of all actions, self-control. If you're unable to meditate, if you're unable to do abhyasa, if you're unable to even surrender to nature and simply act as an instrument, then what is the next best thing that you can do on the spiritual path? He says, if you're unable to do any of these things, then don't worry. You can still be spiritual. You can still be on the journey. The beauty of this is that it helps a seeker at every level. There is no right or wrong spiritual practice. It depends on which stage are you at. It depends on which stage are you at. It's not what you do that matters, that makes you spiritual. It's how you do it. At your stage, if you're performing the right kind of activity, you're being spiritual. So this caters to every level of seeker. So if you're not capable of A, B, C, what is D? What is the next best thing you can do? He says, taking refuge in the union with me. Taking inspiration, taking refuge in the union with me, in the idea, in the goal of self-realization. You know, ultimately, what your goal in life is. You've heard it, you've been told it, maybe you can even relate to it. What is your goal? Ultimately, I need to merge with God. My goal is not to indulge in the senses and earn more wealth and party all my life. That's not my goal. I'm convinced. I may not be completely prepared for it, but I'm convinced that my goal is self-realization. If not self-realization, at least my goal is spiritual evolution. I have to work on the quality of my thoughts and desires. I have to work on my attachment. I have to work on my selfishness. Taking refuge in the union with me. Taking refuge, taking inspiration in spiritual evolution, spiritual enlightenment, God realization. Taking refuge in that thought. Taking inspiration from that thought. Renounce the fruit of all actions, self-control. Perform all actions, whatever you're doing, whatever desires you have and are prompting you to act, perform them. With what idea? Renouncing the fruit of all actions, self-control. First of all, having a sense of self-control in your activity. Engaging your intellect to control and regulate the whims and fancies of the mind. Not simply do what you want to do, not simply follow the whims of the mind. Plan and program, regulate your life, and renounce the fruit of all actions. The first step of spiritual practice. Forget meditation, forget abhyasa, forget all those things. The first step of spiritual practice is renouncing the fruit of action. What does that mean? It means you are willing to deserve, not desire. It means you are willing to deserve, not desire. You're willing to put the effort. You're willing to put in the action. And you're completely willing to accept whatever results from the action, accept it in a spirit of devotion. Prasadam adhigacchati. Deserve, not desire. Not simply sit back and complain and want and expect. No, placing your action in the forefront. Understanding that the result is in effect. Understanding that the result comes naturally after the action. If I put in the right action, if I put in the right effort, the result will follow. If I put in the right investments, if I put in the right time and effort and energy in the right places, the result will naturally follow. Let me focus on what I am supposed to do. Nature will take care of the rest. I have this desire, no doubt. I want to earn wealth. Okay, I can't eliminate this desire, fine. But let me at least put in the right action to earn wealth. Wealth will follow. If I want fame, if I want name, if I want prosperity, let me put in the right action to achieve these things. The result will follow. If I want success, if I want to be the best sports person, if I want to be the best lawyer, if I want to be the best businessman, let me put in the right action. The result will follow. Deserving, not desiring. That itself is the first step of the spiritual journey. So he says, from your ultimate goal of self-realization, first learn to renounce the fruit of your actions. Learn to renounce your attachment to the result. Renouncing the fruit of actions is not possible. If you're renouncing the fruit of action, you've reached the ultimate. People think renouncing the fruit of action means not even wanting the fruit. That's not what renouncing the fruit of actions means. If you don't want the result, you won't perform the action. Please understand this. If you don't want a result, you won't even perform the action. Every action is prompted by a desire for a certain result. Every action. Don't fool yourself. Every action is prompted by a desire for the result. Whether it is a mundane action, whether it is a spiritual action. Even meditation, why do you do it? Even meditation, why do you do it? A desire for self-realization. What is that? A desire for a result. So every action you perform, from the grossest action to the subtlest action, from the most mundane action to the most spiritual action, it is done with a desire for the result in mind. So renouncing the fruit doesn't mean not wanting the result. Renouncing the fruit means renouncing your attachment to the result, renouncing your craving for the result, renouncing your expectation and uncontrolled asha, hope for the result, focusing on the action. We will discuss this further because this is the central idea. This is the central idea. Forget everything else. This is the fundamental practice with which you have to step into spiritual path. If you're not doing this, you're not being spiritual. If you're not doing this, you could be meditating all day. You could be wearing malas. You could be wearing kurta pajamas. You could be. If you're not doing this, you're not being spiritual. This is the first step. So the 4 stages, he talked about the 4 stages. 4, 3, 2, 1. This is stage 1. This is what you have to begin with. So we'll discuss this further tomorrow. We'll meet again once again out here at 7 a.m. Same place, same link. So see you tomorrow at 7 a.m. With that thought, we'll conclude today's class. Hari Om Tat Sat. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.